Hello and welcome back to Prescribed History, where today's episode we're going to be looking at why did Thatcher win 3 elections in a row. The first election win in 1979, where the 1979 election was largely decided in London, the South and the Midlands, where approximately 40 seats changed from Labour to Tory. These voters were punishing Labour for its perceived failure to deal with inflation, unemployment and the overmighty trade unions, accumulating and depressing scenes of the so-called winter of discontent. As in the previous elections, the Liberal vote was also significant in determining the outcome, although the Liberals held on to most of their seats in their strongholds. Their total vote dropped by over 1 million because some voters blamed them for keeping Callaghan's government in office since 1977. And it is worth noting that photos got nothing to do with this, it just popped up when I searched Liberal. Many of these constituents in the Midlands and the South collapsed. The collapse of the Liberal vote was not enough to hand the seat to the Conservatives, even though Labour did not significantly decline, and in some cases even increased. The Labour Party succeeded in retaining its traditional supporters in the industrial areas of the North, Scotland and Wales, where it won twice as many seats as the Conservatives. This explains why it received more votes than it had done in October 1974. And finally, the Financial Times observed the election as a very divided country. Look at the 1983 election. The rise in unemployment and economic problems had rescued the popularity of the government by 1981, but the election of 1983 saw another Conservative victory, with even with a reduced popular vote. The victory in the Falklands War was seen as a sign of Britain's greater confidence and unity. It increased the personal popularity of Thatcher in her own strongholds. However, the disastrous split of the Labour Party and the selection of Michael Foot as leader in November 1980 played an important part of the outcome. Foot lacked an assured manner on television, and his belief in unilateral nuclear dearmament, which we did a video about, which you can see here, further the nationalisation of industry and government regulations seemed old-fashioned. He and his policies made little appeal to outside traditional voters. The more moderate elements of the party split away from the Labour into the SDP in March 1981, massively damaging the Labour Party. The Labour manifesto was described as the longest suicide note in history because it was so out of touch with the country. Now let's take a look at the Conservative Party, who won more votes than they did in 1979 or in 1983, but lost 21 seats. The particular elements that allowed the victory in 1983, such as weaknesses of Labour leadership and the split in the party, were no longer as important, and there was no Falklands factor or winter of discontent. However, there had been policies that were popular among key sections of the electorate, and there was a sense that the economy was doing well. So now let's look at what the Tories did in 1987. When Thatcher called an election in June 1987, the Conservatives were well ahead in the opinion polls. I forgot about that. The government's policies of selling council houses and sharing privatised industries appealed to many middle-class voters and even skilled working-class voters. These people were either better off or believed that the government supported their desire to increase their wealth and status. Unemployment was falling and the pound was strong. In both 1983 and 1987, the Conservatives benefited from a split in the left wing. So now let's look at the Labour Party in 1987. The Labour Party had not fully recovered in its defeat from 1983, but its new leader, Neil Kinnock, had very publicly criticised the prominent left-wingers and brought the party back towards the centre. And there is a bus there because my granddad kicked Neil Kinnock off a bus. It's got no relation to this, but just a cool story, I thought. The Labour polled over 1.5 million votes more than the 1983 election and won 20 more seats. However, Kinnock's style had limited appeal to many voters. He was often long-winded speeches, and Thatcher seemed to be the stronger leader, with a very firm hold over her colleagues and growing international reputation. So, the Labour Party was more affected by the alliance, who contested every seat in 1987, splitting the anti-Conservative vote. So, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. We were told we had a boring outro in one of our last videos, so I've got a cool subscribe button from the internet. If you did like this, please leave a like, it really does help the channel out, and we'll see you around hopefully.